Guys, they're going to be riding Trek Excalibur 7 bikes. Some of the specs on it, 2.2-inch wide tires, and more importantly, about 28 pounds on this bike frame. Why is that important? They got to lift it up and down when they go through a lot of these obstacles, some of which are a little bit more difficult today now that we've had that sudden downpour.
And that wreaked havoc on the women's side at some points of this track. We saw a lot of passing for position on the slick portions. And here in heat number 1 for the men's side, the fastest qualifier was the 6th quickest in qualifying. That was Jason Carroll. He'll be in lane number 1. Travis Mayer, Rob Forte, 2 athletes that could be very good in this one in 4 and 5. And farther back in the pack includes a couple of big names like Josh Bridges in 14th.
Well, Bridges needs to make up for that 32nd place finish he had in event number 1. Very surprising, but we have Forte and Marin sitting in the front. And here's what we want to look for. Do you understand how to use the bike, the gears, the way to switch, the way to mount, to dismount, that gear knowledge? You got to throttle up when it's straightaway, throttle down on the hills. You have to be aggressive on the course. Take inside turns. Take some chances. You hesitate, you die. You know, I want to see some aggression out there, and I think we're going to get it in Heat 1 for these guys.
10 seconds.
Let's go, Tim!
Stand by.
Expect turn 1 to be a little more aggressive on the men's side than on the women's side, just with the sheer speed that they're able to provide. Coming into turn number 1. And this could be a little treacherous with the rain that we had this morning. It's going to be a little bit slick as we have 20 athletes making their way through the opening turn.
You see a cautious turn right there at the start as guys are kind of stop pedaling, making sure they get through the first turn clean. And now we have to go to these really tight switchbacks where there's only enough room for about 3 or 4 guys wide as these hairpin turns are coming up. And then with the slick grass, you know, you can't take it too fast. Again, you got to take wide, and then you got to find your line. Keep your eyes down and inside.
Cole Sager came out with that football mentality, very aggressive, going from row number 2 all the way into the lead. But he's now been passed by 2 of the names that we thought would do well in this one. 2 motocross guys with their background. Travis Mayer out in front in white, Rob Forte in yellow in second.
Mayer keeping his eyes down and low into the turns, making sure his line on the bike is true. And I like how he gets out of the saddle quickly, finds his feet underneath him again, going into the final turn.
So Mayer in first, Forte in second. Cole Sager with the big jump early on up to third. And mention the motocross background for both Mayer and Forte. Obviously, these aren't motor-powered bicycles. They're bicycles. They're going to be a little bit different, but it does give them a little advantage when it comes to this type of racing.
The advantage is going to be how to look for the course, how to navigate the terrain with speed going into turns, because a lot of guys and don't understand, you know, how fast are you really supposed to be going into these tight turns straightaways. You throttle up, you put the pedal down. You get some advantages when you can. There's really not much room on this course specifically that there's going to be some breaks. This is one of them. Now you're on to the sand, the dirt. This is a lot more flat than it was previously, so you want to not rest too much here, but this might be your only time for a break since we're going to go into the barriers in those switchbacks on the hill.
It's going to be some real quality. Wow, that was a tight turn there in that sharp hairpin. I believe that was Sager and Agidius nearly colliding going around that turn. That in the fight for third. It's Mayer out in front as they go through the barricades for the first time, and we're seeing some quick transitions on and off the bike.
And that's more what we're looking for in Heat 1 on the women's side, is that you got to get off the barriers quick, get onto your bike even quicker. Don't worry about trying to place your feet to start. Those pedals will be there once you get on. So get on top of the seat, find your feet, and then gear up and get back onto the course.
See Sager falling off the pace a little bit. Your top 5. Now the same that was the top 5 on the qualifying order. So row 1 holding positions 1 through 5 as we're about halfway through the opening lap.
Now, all these guys have been through this course twice. They went yesterday, they did a practice lap and a time trial lap. And what they should have done in the practice lap is get a feel for the turns, the terrain, the elevation. On the time trial, you should just try to see how fast you can go recklessly, because there really is nothing, there's no consequences yesterday. Also to get an idea of how fast you go and how you feel after a particular lap.
I could be mistaken, but I'm wondering if Jason Carroll, he's in the green tank top, if he's having some type of issue with his bike, maybe a gear or a chain or something, because he keeps looking down at that bike and trying to kind of awkwardly moving on it, almost like he's feeling it out for some reason.
Well, sometimes, you know, if you're riding through wet grass, it did rain. If you're in the wrong gear and you're putting a little bit too much torque into the pedals, you can slip the chain off of those gear pegs.
Carroll continuing to hold the 4th position behind that man, Travis Mayer, who's led really since about the 2nd or 3rd turn when Cole Sager went on that kamikaze pace early on and took a brief lead. But it went right to Travis Mayer, and he's opened up about a 5-second lead over Rob Forte in 2nd.
We're talking about knowing what gear you're supposed to be in. On these tight hairpin turns on the hillside, it's a light hill, but if you're in the wrong gear, it can be a hard climb, even though it's about 20 yards. You want to be in a low gear, tight turns, fast, get up out of the saddle on the way up, coast on the way down. They're going to have a little bit of a straightaway after this turn, so you want to gear up, hit that straightaway, try to get about 10 to 15 more feet on the rest of the field while you can.
On the women's heat number 1, we saw the pacing drop off about 40 seconds from the laps that we saw in time trials. See what we have here on the men's side, but I would expect somewhere around that same, maybe 30, 40 seconds on the drop off.
Yeah, we did see about a pace of 30 seconds off. It's only a mile and a half, so when you have 30 seconds off a 6-minute pace, that is quite significant as far as redlining is concerned. Here's a couple different options, right? We have guys dismounting on the side. They're keeping their bike on the dirt, not carrying the bike. I like to see that. You don't really need to carry it through the sand pit. You can rest on the handles. That makes it a little bit easier to run through. What I want to see is that will guys take a chance to see how far they can coast into the sand before they dismount.
And we have had a gigantic shakeup of the top 5 going through that sand pit. Mayer was in the lead. He's now in 2nd. BK Goodmanson was 4th. He's now out in front. So it's Bjorgvin Carl Goodmanson in the lead in the yellow tank top. Jason Carroll in the green tank top has moved into 2nd. In 3rd place is Frederick Agidius in the yellow T-shirt. He's side by side with Travis Mayer in white. Rob Forte has fallen from 2nd down to 5th.
But he's still in that lead pack, and that's all you really need to be when on this first lap. Now this is where we have the turn, long turn, slightly uphill after the last set of logs. And then we have a downhill and a straightaway. You want to see them get in the highest gear that they can still maintain a high cadence. Being in a high gear and a slow cadence is not advantageous because it's putting too much stress on the legs. Get in a high gear that keeps you in a cadence about 90 to 100 revolutions per minute. Hit the straightaway and thin out the pack. It's not necessarily all about getting a lead, but more about not bunching up, because when we hit these tight turns, you want to take turns without having someone in your way. Get some distance on the rest of the field so that the turns can be free for you.
Jason Carroll's time trial time was 6 minutes 19 seconds his first lap here, and that includes going from that standstill start 6 minutes 53 seconds. So we're looking at about 35 seconds the difference from time trial to this race condition, and only 10 seconds separating your top 5 who are in exact order of where they qualified in time trials yesterday.
See Carroll's cadence, it's a very slow. He's in a high gear, he's a strong guy, but that is going to take a lot of energy out of your legs. This is only the second lap. I really like the cadence on the back 2 athletes behind him, where he's cycling through very quickly. He's not necessarily gaining any ground, but he's not working any harder. Look how hard Carroll's having to work. He's out of his saddle, slow cadence into the turn. I want to see athletes be in a lower, lighter gear, because the in and out, you'll be able to start quick and finish the turns quicker.
Side-by-side race for position. Agidius on the outside, Carroll on the inside. That will change as they go through the switchbacks, of course. And Carroll will hold that lead position.
Look at the cadence you see on Agidius. That's a much smarter way to do it. Carroll is working way too hard. Look how slow he is in and out of the turns. Agidius' cadence, this is exactly what you need to see. This is where having knowledge of how to use a bike, whether it's elevation or turns, you're slow out of the turn, which means you need to be in a lower gear.
I feel like we saw two smart moves there. Agidius for the smart move on the pacing going into the turn. Carroll for the smart move on the block that he put in that turn, cutting off Bjorkgren Carl Gudmundsson by just that little bit, closing that door on him before he can get around.
Yeah, these guys are being way too nice out here on the racetrack. You got to get position. This is your race. You're riding with 20 other people, but who cares? This is your position. Cut. Take the inside, take the outside, swing wide on your turns. Don't worry about people next to you.
And Gudmundsson will get the pass this time on Jason Carroll on the straightaway. And Carroll almost looked like he just gave him the position at that point, just trying to stay in his pace that he's got.
Well, if Carroll's coach is out there on the side when he passes him, he has to tell him to shift down into a lighter gear.
Over the barriers for lap number 2. All three looking about level in terms of pacing, and they come out 3 wide out of the barriers. Carroll stumbles a little bit getting onto the bike, and it's Agidius and Gudmundsson side by side for the lead here on lap number 2.
Good transitions for all 3 athletes. They were able to plant their foot, hop on the bike, and get right into pedaling. As you see, Agidius is staying in that low gear. Gudmundsson just behind him. Carroll is still in that high gear. I don't know if he switched gears one time in this lap and a half so far.
That still makes me wonder, when we were looking at him looking at the bike, if there's some type of gear issue that he's having. 10 minutes in, 30-minute time cap here in heat number 1 of men's cyclocross. It's event number 2 here on the opening day of the 2017 Reebok CrossFit Games. Your 3 leaders were the 3 fastest qualifiers here in heat number 1. It's Frederick Agidius out in front, Bjorkgren Carl Gudmundsson in second, and Jason Carroll in third.
I think one thing Gudmundsson needs to be careful of is that he's taking the turn, but he's putting his foot down. You don't really need to do that on a bike too much. You want to be careful is that you lose your footing getting back onto the pegs, because the trick here is that these aren't clip-in shoes, so your foot can slide off these very easily, and if you're putting your foot down in wet grass, that makes it even harder to keep your foot in contact with the pegs.
That was very smooth for what could have been a treacherous moment. 3 wide over the logs. If one of them falls, well, all of them might fall at that point, but they all make it through very cleanly. As Gudmundsson takes the lead ahead of Agidius in second, Carroll in third. Mayer and Forte have fallen off that lead pack by a significant margin.
Second time they're navigating through these, low-setting hill switchbacks, but this is where you can make up very valuable seconds or really have an advantage of not working harder than you need to. I say stay in a low gear, get up out of the saddle on the climbs. It's only going to take about 10 pedals to get up through that. A little sprint, relax on the downhills. Here you have the turn, and you got a straightaway coming up. Shift into a higher gear, but make sure your cadence can stay high. You don't want to be having slow pedal strokes. All that means is that you might be going the same speed, but you're working harder to get there. Hit about that middle gear range. I mean, the range on these bikes is quite extensive, but you're after 1 lap or 2 laps, you start to find the sweet spot for you and your bike. It's not the same for everyone, so it's what you can tolerate. Carroll, strong athlete, can stay in that high gear, but it's going to end up working against him towards the end.
And it can all change when it gets to the sand pit. We saw it in lap 1. We'll see it in lap 2. For more on this obstacle, we go to Sam Farber.
And what a difference a day makes in terms of this obstacle. Yesterday, when these athletes did their time trial, it wasn't wet out here. It was a much, much different sand trap than it is today. Now, it could get easier for some athletes as that sand's a little bit more compacted on top, but once you start to sink, it's going to be tough to get out. Now, again, it's different from yesterday, so whatever strategy these athletes had coming into this event, it might have changed. We'll see what they do second and third time through that sand pit.
Thanks, Sam. And that battle again shapes up through the sand pit as Agidius retakes the lead over Gudmundsson. We've seen several passes here on the middle lap of competition. That was a full-blown jump by Gudmundsson there over that log this time.
I mean, if you're comfortable on a bike, you can clear those logs and never actually have to touch them. the trick there is that it's a little bit harder when you have this pedal option, right? There's no cage where you can slip your foot into and have contact fixing you to the bike. It's just loose. You don't have clip-ons. And what you'd see with, say, a normal cyclocross bike is that their foot or their shoes clip onto the pedals. And when you can do that, you can pull up the front wheel and then pull your heels, and that'll pull the back wheel up and over. It's not going to work with these bikes.
So 2 laps down, 1 lap remains for your top 3, but it's a different story for Rob Forte, who is being passed now, or perhaps being passed by Noah Olson. And this is around that top 5 positioning, maybe 5th, 6th, or 7th for these two as Olson goes around Forte. And Rob Forte, one of the favorites that we were talking about off air and on air for this event, really struggling here for what we were expecting.
Carroll still hanging tough behind him, but look how hard he is working to stay with that group. The other guy is a very quick cadence, light pedals, and that's what you want to see is quick revolutions on the bike. And this is the 3rd lap. They've had 2 opportunities, and when you get used to the course, this is where you can see them start to take, I would say, more chances, not unnecessary chances, but a comfortability factor. You've gone through twice. You know where you fit best. Is it the straightaways, the turns, maybe these hairpins off the quick? Maybe it's the back half of this. Maybe it's the sand pit. You figured it out. You should have your race strategy dialed in for this final lap.
Carroll perhaps looking to make a move, but he got a little squirrely there going into that turn. Drifted out wide, nearly went into that heavier grass, the rough, if you will, if you want to use a golf term here on this one. And he lost a little bit of that push that he had trying to make that overtake on Goodmanson.
Now, Carroll loses contact with these guys on the turns because he's in too high of a gear. But he's so strong and aggressive is that he catches up very easily on these mid-range short straightaways. So if Carroll can stay close to these guys, especially after the final log obstacle, he's in a high enough gear that when they start coming towards the turn and the finish, if he has enough energy left, can finish well.
And the number one key that we spoke about earlier was gear knowledge. Perhaps this whole time when Carroll was looking at the bike and trying to, it looked like something was wrong, maybe he was just figuring out what gear he needed for this point of the event.
And you can see that because there's 2 different sections on here where you can see where the chain's sitting. If it's sitting on the smaller ones towards the middle, that means you're in a lighter gear. If it's in the higher, bigger gears, right, those are the ones you want to be on for straightaways like this.
Looked like Carroll was about to make a push at the end of that straightaway, and Goodmanson kind of put the throttle down a little bit more and try to pull away, but all 3 of them approach the barricades nearly side by side by side. It's 3 wide for the lead to the barricades for the final time.
So we're the final barrier, and here's where you see foot on, foot over. That's great transition from all 3. We saw them do it on the first 2 laps. So final time they're going over the barriers, and now we're going to get into those tight switchbacks on the hill. Stay in a low gear, take a tighter turn. The turns are going to switch your position, so you got to make sure you're always trying to get that inside track on these turns.
Continues to be relatively 3 wide. They're all within a length of each other. Going into that tight hairpin to start these switchbacks coming up.
And they're still staying seated on the turns. I know these guys are moving very quickly, but get out of the seat. It's easier to pedal up hills standing up when you do it when you're talking about such a short distance to go. Take a turn, stand up, sprint. It's going to be a 3 to 5 second sprint. Get up, get on your bike, and then find your pace after that.
And with a race this intense for these 3 athletes, you got to draw back also to what happened earlier today with that 5K run broken up with that 500-meter swim in the middle. Now this and the push that they're having on the bikes. You know their legs are absolutely burning here on the final lap of cyclocross here in heat number 1.
I mean, their legs have been burning since the start over this. But these guys look really comfortable on their bikes. Carroll's he's still in that high gear, but he'll catch up. He'll catch up to these guys because when you get to the straightaway, it's better be in that high gear, just not on the turns.
Question for him at this point might be how far away is he from the lead when he gets to that final straightaway. He could have the power to overtake, but he's got to be close enough to be within striking distance to do so. Goodmanson pulling away from Agidius and Carroll, trying to prevent that last second push from Carroll from happening.
What I want to see is get up. There you go. Get up out of the saddle, sprint up the hill, coast down the hill. Just lay off the pedals. Keep your inside foot high so you can take a tighter turn. You don't want the inside foot down. It's going to hit the ground when you do that. Keep the inside foot high, coast around the turn, get up out of the saddle on the hills. I like that. That's what I'm wanting to see.
Quick pace on the downhill for Bjorgvin Carl Gudmundsson. He continues to lead the way over Frederick Agidius in second, Jason Carroll in third. As we come up to the sand pit for the final time, and this has been the big shakeup element of this race. Each time we've gotten there, we've seen some changes for critical positioning. They'll come around this turn, and then they hit the sand for the final time.
If Carroll wants a shot to stay with him, he has to get through the sand smoothly, hit the turn, and start dancing on those pedals because he is in a higher gear. He's going to lose some contact right off the turn.
Gudmundsson went deep into the sand, but the transition was a little bit slower. Agidius ran it through most of the way. He had a quicker transition in, but a slower transition out. They continue to hold 1, 2, 3. Gudmundsson, Agidius, and Carroll. Carroll trying to go around on the outside for second.
They have a short hill before they hit the final logs, and you got to hit here with speed, but you have to be slightly in control. If you crash here, it's over.
Every time these three spread apart from each other, they bunch right back up as they approach the logs for the final time. All three looking smooth.
Now we have a bit uphill into this long turn before the final stretch. Carroll needs to stay close, but if Gudmundsson and Agidius know what they're doing, they need to gear up out of this final turn because we have a straightaway downhill to finish out.
And this could be great news for all three of them when it comes to the overall placing. One heat remains after this one, but with the intensity of this race, including this push right, Jason Carroll around the outside. He goes around Agidius for second. He's battling now with Gudmundsson for the lead. Side by side, it looks like he got near the wall on that one, and it might be just enough to keep Gudmundsson out in front. They're side by side of the line. Give it to Bjorgvin Carl Gudmundsson, winner of heat number 1. Jason Carroll in second. Frederick Agidius in third, separated by just over 2 seconds, first through third.
I said if Carroll could stay close, he was in a high gear the whole time, but it would pay off on the final turn and straightaway. That was enough to pass Agidius, but Gudmundsson held on.
And that chain looks real loose for Travis Mayer. And it sounds like he actually had to repair that chain, jumped off, fixed it real quick, and back onto the bike as Mayer continuing to hold on to the 4th position, well behind that top 3.
And that's, that's really unfortunate to have, the equipment kind of take you out of contention in this heat. Now everyone's riding the same thing. It's just part of the race. It's part of the sport. What you need to understand is like how you shift and when you shift on those gears. If you hit some bumps and turns, shift mid-gear, you can lose the chain. If you shift too drastically from 27 to 12, that can lose the chain.
So Mayer will be 4th. Rounding out the top 5 will be Noah Olson in 5th. He'll be the only one that started outside of row number 1 to finish in the top 5. And Paul Castillo will finish in 6th place. That's not too surprising with the amount of sprint triathlons he's done. He's gotten very comfortable on the bike as of late. Rob Forte, one of the favorites in this one, will be the 7th place finisher. Nice race for 8th. This is Cole Sager out in front, just ahead of Tim Paulson. So our top 9 are in at right around the 22-minute mark. 8 minutes until the 30-minute time cap. Another one of the rookies, Tommy Vanas, will be the 10th place finisher. So the top 10 in qualifying will be the top 10 in the event results. 11th place will be Jeff Patzer, another Games rookie. And then one of the more veteran athletes you can have in the field, Scott Panchik, will be in 12th. Michael Palomba will be the 13th place finisher. Zeke Grove, new father, as he and his wife welcomed a baby about a month ago, will be 14th place here in this event. Travis Williams in 15th. And that leaves behind some very familiar names in this field, as Cody Anderson, second time he's been to the games, will be our next finisher in 16th. And how about the names that are left? Alex Smith, Garrett Fisher, and Josh Bridges will be the final 3 here in this one, as Fisher crosses the line in 17th. And for Josh Bridges and Alex Smith, this is trouble, especially with the troubles that they had earlier in event number 1.
Yeah, not an ideal start for these athletes. Yeah, Alex Smith, we knew he probably wouldn't be the best at some of these more longer endurance ones. He's waiting to hope that we have some gymnastics and heavy barbells later in the weekend. But, you know, Josh Bridges, not a good start in event 1. Definitely not what he wanted to happen in event 2.
He's got the look that he knows that was a rough time there as he comes across the line in 18th here in the heat. Still 20 athletes left to go after this one. We'll have women's heat number 2 coming up next, then men's heat number 2, as Alex Smith, the last remaining athlete on the course. Still about 6 minutes until that half-hour time cap, though.
And I think a lot of times people see is a bike out there, and this is much harder than it looks. You know, just what a bike feels like. It's not like an assault bike. You know, you sit on there for 50 cows, 100 cows. It's just completely different. You know, you got to have the endurance, the legs, what that run, swim, run does to your legs. I think not a lot of people really were expecting to feel those in this event.
So just like we saw in Heat 1 of the women's side, the top points athlete in event number 1 wins the heat here in event number 2. Bjorgvin Carl Gudmundsson was 4th place earlier today. 1st place here in the heat, just ahead of Jason Carroll by about a half second. But it wasn't without plenty of lead changes along the way.
Oh, we had a nice sprint start to the first turn, and Travis Mayers in that light gray shirt in the sea of green, kind of the outside looking in, but he started very quick. Gudmundsson behind Sager. Sager made a big push right off the bat. Mayer came inside. And, you know, and Mayer's one of those athletes who we thought would do well. Didn't do poorly. He just didn't finish quite as high as we thought. And then we had the top 3 slowly shifting through. Bjorgvin Carl Gudmundsson, Jason Carroll behind him, with Mayer sitting in that 2nd place position. And then this is where the top 3 started to separate themselves from the rest of the field, as Agidius, Carroll, and Gudmundsson were going side by side throughout pretty much the 2.5 laps after the first hairpin turns. And it went from Carroll to Agidius, from Agidius to Bjorgvin Carl Gudmundsson. This inside turn right there, easy over the logs, and that gave him a good position to get ahead and into the lead. And these guys' dismounts and transitions were flawless the entire time, especially through the sand pits. But Bjorgvin Carl Gudmundsson, he could actually clear the whole set of logs. The back tire didn't touch, the front tire didn't touch. And I said Carroll was in a high gear the whole time, too high, but it was enough at the end because you have the downhill turn, that straightaway to the finish, but it was just a little too late as Gudmundsson was able to hold on to the finish.
That distance only about 1 bike length between them, and a smooth dismount for the heat winner, Bjorgvin Carl Gudmundsson, who's with Sam Farber.
Bjorgvin, you were in a big race there, a 3-way race pretty much the entire time. You didn't lead any lap until the last one. How did you plot your pacing throughout this race?
Well, soon in the race, it was me, Jason, and Frederick that was leading. I just kind of kept on their tails. Sometimes I passed them, and that's the last stretch. I just try to win it, man. Just try to overtake them.
Jason really pushed you there in that last turn for home. Did you notice him, and what were you doing to keep him behind you there in that final home stretch?
Yeah, I noticed him soon enough, so I could gear up and go for it. Yeah, I knew that he was gonna try to take over, and I just tried to keep that first place.
When you guys first learned about this event via social media, all you saw was a bike. How did your preparation for a bike event compare to what you just did today?
We didn't do too much of mountain biking. We did like 2 trainings, and then at home I have mountain bike and a lot of good tracks, so I can go there and play.
Bjorgvin, thank you.
Thank you so much.
So a good first day for Bjorgvin Carl Gudmundsson, 4th place in event number 1. He's the current leader with 1 heat remaining in men's cyclocross. We'll get ready for heat number 2 of women's action coming up next.
Okay.
Look like ass. It makes 6K look like ass. It's on a whole nother like. Isn't the body of that thing like? Probably. But you asked me what to get. I mean, I didn't know. How about what are you guys shooting on? Dragon? I would ask Peter. Yeah. Okay. I would ask Peter. I don't know. I know that there's gotta be a lot of you guys. Amazing things. Yeah. Just shooting amazing stuff. Very, very happy with you. 1DX? Mark 2.
One final time, we get some cyclocross action in event number 2 of the 2017 Reebok CrossFit Games. It's in heat number 2 in the men's side of the competition. Brandon Domain, Chase Ingram, Sam Farber with you here at the Alliant Energy Center in Madison, Wisconsin. And they've got to chase down some times. They also got to chase down the man atop the leaderboard, Brent FIkowski, with the Event 1 win and the 100 points that goes with it. Janikowski, Ben Smith, Bjorkman, Carl Goodmanson, and James Newberry round out the top 5 in their next task. 3 laps around this track.
We got 4.5 miles total, 1.5 miles each lap. Those tight turns you see, then they're going to go over the barriers, another turn, some logs, and then the hills. Sand trap in the middle, final set of logs, and they got that nice downhill straightaway to finish and start one lap and to the other.
Here in heat number 2, your points leader, Brent FIkowski, will be in lane number 7. Right behind him, a couple of good athletes in terms of the endurance events. Janikowski will be in lane number 6. Jason Smith has shown that he's got that capacity as well in lane 3. The fastest qualifier, Ricky Garrard, will be in lane 1. Here on the second page, Ben Smith, 3rd place in event number 1, very quietly so, will be in lane number 18. But the defending champion, Matt Fraser, will be in lane number 2.
Well, I can't wait to see what he comes out and does. I think Michael Jordan said it best, is that I hate losing more than I enjoy winning. And he wants to get back up in that first place position going into this event. And this is a good one for him. He did well in the time trials. FIkowski, phenomenal performance in event number 1. Very cerebral, very good pacing. This is another one of those, knowing how to use your gears in and out of the turn. You got to be smart as well as fit for this particular event.
And away we go for the final time with Cyclocross. And a bit of a change there, as you saw a little bit of a shake-up in the order. They could pick where they were on that one in the front row, as we saw on the women's side. as they come into turn number 1 for the first time, and Ricky Garrard will be the leader. The fastest qualifier by 15 seconds over Matt Fraser will be the leader coming out of turn 1.
And that goes with, you build some confidence going in. You guy's a rookie athlete, had a great event 1 to start off the day, knowing full well that you are, quote unquote, the fastest guy out here based off the time trial times. It's good to get out and then get into your own groove and not worry about the other athletes around you.
So Garrard into the switchbacks for the first time already with about a 4-length lead over Fraser in second. I do believe that's Ben Smith in third. Excuse me, take that back. Jason Smith in third. Went with the wrong Smith there. I see the Smith and just went straight to Ben there. Sorry about that.
And I think one thing you see with some of these ex-motocross guys or these flat track athletes is that they know how to read the course. And it doesn't seem like much. It's like, oh, yeah, obviously there's a turn there. I can see that. I don't need to be a cyclist, off-road guy, even a motocross guy. Is that you need to be able to read the turns, not just relative to the people around you, but just understanding that where you can be aggressive or not be aggressive. And that's one of the things we're looking at, is that being aggressive in the right spots, and that's being able to read the field. Not hesitating when making decisions. That's a big one. When I shift up gears, down gears, do I push the pace or not? And the gears themselves, it seems silly. We've belabored this for the first 3 heats, but that is the difference maker on this course, is that knowing how to use the bike that you're on. Because if you do not understand, if you're sitting in a high gear the whole time, you're not going to be able to maximize your performance and your ability on the course.
First time to an obstacle here in Heat 2 of the men's race. Ricky Garrard, he handled it well in the time trials, looks to be handling it well here in the race, but Matt Fraser had the rear wheel of his bike flip that barrier, and it nearly made him drop the bike. He lost a couple of seconds there over that first obstacle.
Plus being able to pick the bike up and pick it up high enough to get over those barriers, and I think he grabbed a little too high on that middle crossbeam on the bike. You want to pick it up lower, maybe right where the seat spoke meets the frame. And that's a lower position, so it actually allows you to lift the bike higher without having to try any harder.
And on the right side of the screen, it was actually the front wheel that clipped the barrier for Fraser.
Well, look how high his hand is. That is actually, you want to go a little bit lower, like I said, where the seat peg meets the frame. That was a little too high to the handlebars, so that's going to keep the nose of the bike down. You don't have to lift it as high when there's a lower point to grab on the frame. Grab right underneath the seat post, lift the bike up from there.
So Garrard is well out in front. Fraser now under siege by Fikowski for second, as Fikowski had the inside line. He will take that position. Jason Smith in fourth, looking to do the same as they approach the log for the first time.
You want to be able to pop the front wheel up, let the back wheel roll over. Make sure you stay over your foot pedals. You do not want to lean forward. A lot of athletes we saw yesterday pulled up the front wheel, stayed too far in front, and then when the back wheel hit the logs, pushed them over the top of the handlebars.
And Ricky Garrard, the rookie out of Australia, and if you're going to describe his sport background in any way, yes, he played professional rugby for a while, but it's more of everything was his background. No surprise that he knows how to handle the bike here. And for more about the bikes, we go down to Sam Farber.
Yeah, these Trek Excalibur 7 bikes, something, as you guys have been saying, that the athletes need to understand. In terms of weight, it's not really a problem for these athletes. It's about 28 pounds, so not anything they should have any difficulty lifting, but as you notice, you got to lift in the right places and get the bike high enough to get over some of the obstacles. Also, this is not your Tour de France style road bike where you can clip in. That's good as you come up to some of these obstacles, but can also be a problem. If you lose your footing anywhere on this course, you can lose a lot of time.
Thanks, Sam. And somebody losing 0 time thus far on this opening lap is Ricky Garrard, who looks so comfortable on this first lap.
I like the pace at which he's going, and I like the cadence. And what I mean by that is how fast his feet are revolving onto the pedals. And what you want to see through this entire time is a high cadence. So many different times you see as he hit the sand, and I love how far he got deep into that.
Wow.
That is what I've been waiting to see from a lot of these athletes, is that Get into a low gear. You're coming through a downhill. Hit the sand with some speed, especially since it's rain. It's a bit more compact than it was yesterday, so you're not going to swirl around with the front part of the wheel as much. So stay in a low gear, hit some speed, pedal your way through it, and then buy yourself some time over there on the sand pit.
That's easily the deepest we've seen anybody go into that sand pit. And Matt Fraser back in second place ahead of Fiikowski and Jason Smith. And that playing out a good 10 seconds behind the leader, Gerard.
Coming off this final obstacle, these logs are a bit higher, more of a pyramid stacked on top of each other. It's straight into enough of a slight incline that if you're in the wrong gear, you're going to have to work a little too hard to get up that.
So Gerard putting the finishing touches on lap number 1, but perhaps the most important moment in terms of that fight for second came right here on the right side.
Pedaling through, low gear, pedal, 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 pedal. Keep the tires straight and then dismount. That's exactly what you want to see a lot of these athletes do, is because you're not going to have to waste time getting off the bike, running through the sand where you can cause you to work a little bit harder than you want to. So I really like to see Matt's how far he went into that sand pit.
Earlier today, we were talking about some of the athletes almost hesitating to throw down some blocks and cut the line a little bit going into the turns. Even on the straightaway, you could see Fraser kind of looking over his shoulder, seeing where everybody was. He's always hyper aware of what's going on around him anyway, but that could be something that helps him out in this close race for second. And the man that Fraser is trying to hold off, Fiikowski, one of the best endurance athletes on the men's field. So Fraser in the lighter blue, Fiikowski in that dark blue, black shirt, the tank top right behind him.
It seems like he's comfortable just staying on Matt's back wheel, and it's fine. It's the beginning of the second lap. And what you want to see is that as Ricky Gerard is really starting to extend his lead, we see this a lot in road racing, is that you can work together and help catch him, because there is going to be some drafting, especially in these straightaways. To gear up, turn the speed on, and try to make up some ground, because you don't want to let Ricky Gerard get too far ahead, and where it's too late by that third lap.
And Fiikowski, I don't think, wanted any part of being in the back half of that draft with Matt Fraser for too much longer, as he goes around him, taking the inside line in one of those switchback turns. And there is a lot of closeness there and the rest of the way through the switchbacks. Down the dirt road for the first time here on the middle of 3 laps around this 1.5 mile, 20 turn course. It's Gerard 1, Fiikowski 2, Fraser 3, Jason Smith in 4th. He's fallen off that pace from Fraser and Fiikowski just a little bit, but still within striking distance if one of them or both of them slip. And Ricky Gerard with his, I don't even want to call that a misstep. The back wheel hit the barrier, but it didn't really trouble him a whole lot.
I mean, if it's not clean, it's a misstep. You don't have enough time, especially with these athletes chasing you, and Matt did a much better job grabbing a little bit lower on the frame, not letting those front tire clip that barrier.
Fraser and Fiikowski side by side. Looks like Fraser will retake the second position. Just bit by bit, that interval from first to that fight for second just continues to increase. Brent FIkowski, the points leader, after lap number 1, found himself in 10th in this field of 20. At 6 minutes and 58 seconds for the opening lap, about 40 seconds behind Gerard's first lap of 6:19. Still Fiikowski right on the rear wheel of Matt Fraser as they approach that log. Both clear it smoothly.
You know, Matt looks pretty comfortable on the bike where he is right now. Fikowski sitting on the rear tire. Personally, I think that's on purpose because Fikowski was ahead of him out of the barriers, and it looked like he kind of just let Matt go ahead, which is a pretty savvy move if it's just the two of you guys, because the work that Matt does is going to help Fikowski if he's close enough to draft on him. You can't really draft on these switchbacks here in the hill, but when we have those longer straightaways, it does, and it is an advantage, and you can definitely feel that. But Fikowski, he got an inside line, so you know what Matt needs to do is tighten up those turns a little bit. I like how he's standing up in between on the uphills, but you got to keep your eyes low on the inside of the turn. You should be looking at those hay bales on the turn. That's going to keep your line true, keep you close enough to the edge, and save some energy and some time in and out of those turns. And with Fikowski and Fraser so involved in each other, trying to sort out that second and third place, it just allows Gerard to pull away bit by bit, as he is well out in front with daylight in front of him. Here's another one of those straightaways. Fikowski and Fraser tying up. It looks like he's sitting back a little bit. Maybe let Mac pull him through. It's nice and controlled into the sand pit for Gerard. We'll see if Fraser can recreate what he did the first time. Looks like he's going to go for it. And just like the first time, gets about halfway through. There's one thing I think Matt's looking for, is that you can see him eyeballing the sand. And here's what you want to do. Find someone else's tire tracks and follow them. Because if you find your own line, there's divots and footprints and chewed up sand everywhere. But if Ricky Gerard just went in front of me, I'm going to follow his tire tracks as follow, because all that is digging a trench for your bike. And now you're not going to hit those divots and turns. So I think that is exactly what Matt's looking for. And I think it's a phenomenal, very savvy move by Matt Fraser. Fraser and Fikowski approaching the logs, both over clean. Keep in mind, this is heat 2 of 2. Heat number 1 was won by Bjorgvin Karl Gudmundsson at 20 minutes, 27.01 seconds, only a half second quicker than Jason Carroll, and a tight finish there. These athletes here in heat number 2, led by Ricky Gerard, are trying to chase down that time. But Ricky Gerard, the bottom part of your screen, looks so smooth, very relaxed. I like the speed and cadence of his pedal strokes. Seems very comfortable, good breathing. He's in a high gear. It's just a straightaway. It's a little bit downhill. He had about a 10-second edge off Fraser and Fikowski after the first lap. So I'm curious to see if they've closed the gap. Ben Smith had a quiet first event, I should say, finishing third place. Here it's a disappointing event for him, as he's currently sitting in the 15th position, putting the finishing touches on lap number 2. Going to that final log obstacle. And there's just not a lot of aggression or speed there. I would say it's almost a little too slow. You got to be careful with those log obstacles. You can't take them slow. There's too much jostling when you're popping over there, and if you're too slow, it's going to really dramatically throw your bike off track on those log obstacles. Now, what's cool about these switchbacks, especially if you're the leader, is that you can easily see where the guys are behind you. Instead of having to look over your shoulder, which can be dangerous when you're going at high speeds on these bikes, is that he can just look to the right. There's Matt. I can see him clearly. Matt's actually separated himself quite a bit from Fikowski. And we're thinking about overall time from lap 1 to lap 2. It seems pretty close at the same time difference between Matt and Gerard after that second lap. 10-second interval after lap number 1. It's a 13-second interval after lap number 2. So only about 3 seconds lost on that second lap by Fraser to Gerard. But at that point, it's basically barring disaster. This one should be handedly for Ricky Gerard. But we've seen that happen in the first 3 heats. All it takes is one slip off the pedal, one bad line out of a turn, and you crash into one of these side barriers. A misstep off the bike into the sand pit. So when you have an opportunity to get some lead, this is where you take it, on the straightaways where there's very little danger when it comes to these obstacles. So on these straightaways, if I'm in the lead, I'm pedaling down, I'm putting my chin down, I'm dancing on those pedals as hard as I can, because I know I need to be a little bit more cautious into some of these turns, especially when you're coming up to these barriers.
As Gerard approaches the barriers for the final time here on this third lap, all four walls cleared back on it. He was one position away from making the games 1 year ago, finishing 6th place in the Pacific Regional. Here he gets his first shot at games competition. He's making the most of it as he leads that man, the defending champion, Matt Fraser, by about 13 seconds. Janikowski in third. And these three have really put on, it looks like Kowski is struggling compared to Gerard. It looks like Fraser is well behind, but these three are putting on a fantastic performance in this event, especially when you look back how far back everybody else is. So earlier today, we spoke about the rain and how that was going to affect the course. We spoke about how cold it was, but the morning has gone on. We're into the early afternoon here in Wisconsin. For more on the weather, we go to Sam Farber.
Yeah, guys, a lot has changed since we started this event here at Cyclocross. It was about 60 degrees when the day got started, and we obviously had just come off that rain. It's warmed up considerably, up to 70 degrees. I will say this, it's much cooler than it was yesterday, so a little bit more comfortable for the athletes. Fortunately, though, it's been dry. There was some concern after the rain that it might eat up the course quite a bit. The fact that it's been dry has probably helped it hold up for these athletes all throughout the day.
Thanks, Sam. And a very humid day, of course, but that's a lot easier to deal with than rain and almost some thunderstorms around the area, but weren't within striking distance of the course in event number one. As Gerard continuing to lead Fraser, they're first and second, about 13 seconds, continuing to be the interval. Still 3 minutes away from that time from BK Goodmanson in heat number one. And it looks like that will be falling here in heat number two. And no surprise, Gerard was the fastest in the time trials by about 15 seconds over second place Fraser.
Very impressed with Gerard, starting at a very aggressive pace, but maintaining that pace throughout this. And look how fast he's coming down that hill. Good tight turn. Leave no doubt. Just make sure you get clean in and out of the turns. You got 2 more obstacles left to go, so make sure you take advantage of this straightaway.
That is the interval, first to second, just to put in pictures how much of a lead Ricky Gerard has, how impressive he has been throughout this event as he approaches the sand pit for the final time.
What's good is you get to see where Matt is behind him, and he has a very substantial lead. Let's just say be extra cautious getting on and off the bike. You have 1 more obstacle left to go, and if he just maintains a good steady pace, he's going to be just fine coming into the finish.
Smooth transition off and onto the bike. Matt Fraser making his way to the sand pit. This has been where really he's been the most impressive out of anybody through this obstacle, getting halfway again before he hops off the bike. Logs for the final time for Gerard as Kowski makes his way through the sand pit.
You know, Matt Fraser really tried to push the pace here on this third lap, but Gerard is just not backing down. In fact, he's speeding up coming into this final stretch.
And through this downhill sweeping left for the final time. Still a minute 15 seconds. He could basically fall off the bike and walk it the rest of the way and have this event win in impressive fashion. The second career event at the Games for Ricky Gerard. It's his first career event win in very impressive fashion. 1 minute ahead of the former time to beat.
Wow. I mean, what more can you say other than just what an incredible start to him. You know, you want to see if they have the rookie nerves when you come in, a lot of adrenaline, but just to keep focused, making sure you play your game, and it paid off. Ricky Gerard under 20 minutes.
Oh, by the way, second place for Matt Fraser, and the reigning and defending fittest man on earth is in a great position after the morning here on the opening day.
And in a great event in the morning, and cap it off with a second place finish in this event in total. It's going to set him up nice for this afternoon.
Also a good morning today on the first day of competition for Janikowski. Second in event number one, third in event number two. Jason Smith, it took him a while. It took him 7 years of trying, 6 of those with top 10 finishes at a regional, and he's finally made it to be the first native African competitor to qualify for the games. He will be in 4th, and this is the race here. Cody Mooney leading the way for 5th. 4 athletes making the way through. It is Mooney in 5th, Esslinger in 6th, Alex Anderson in 7th, and Samuel Quant in 8th. Points leader coming into this event, Brent FIkowski trying to hold off fellow Canadian Patrick Vellner. They surrounded 3rd and 4th at the games last year. It will be FIkowski taking the position. He's in 9th, Vellner in 10th. That's Street Horner, rookie from the Central Regional, in 11th. George Sanchez, rookie out of the West Regional, will be our 12th finisher, and the veteran of the U.S. Army will round out the top 15 unofficially in this event. James Newberry, the Pacific Regional champion, 13th here in the event. We're starting to see some more of those times from heat number 1 become a factor. Looks like he'll be 17th in the event. Elijah Muhammad making his way down that downhill turn onto the straightaway for the final time. So it will be Muhammad in 14th here in the heat. Give 15th place to Holden Rethwill. Zach Carcetti in 16th. And the rest of the field making their way through. Logan Collins in 17th. Dakota Rager in 18th. And the 2015 champion Ben Smith 19th in the heat. 28th unofficially in the event. And Mitchell Cinnamon will be the last athlete remaining on the course.
It's, Ben can be a slow starter and a strong finisher. He did it at regionals in years past. He did it this year too. I'm not worried about Ben. I think, the question remains is, biking maybe not a Smith brother forte. It could be that, but I'm not worried about Ben Smith. We'll just throw that out there.
And if you want to know how hard this event is, you got a good visual representation of it at the look of the face of Mitchell Cinnamon, who is struggling through this final half of a lap. And this is no easy task, despite what Ricky Garrard made it look like about 3 minutes ago when he completed this.
That's what I'm saying is, these athletes are so good across the board. It doesn't really matter what you throw at them, and then you see, a more human element come into play with an event like this. And, you have Mitchell finishing up, but the good thing is I believe people might have an opportunity to do this later just to really see how hard this could be for we'll say, a normal human being.
So the 27-year-old making his 2nd consecutive appearance at the games out of South Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. Still about 6.5 minutes until that half-hour time cap, so well in position to beat that. So he makes his way through that left turn for the final time down the straightaway, and he's going to be welcomed by at least 1,000 fans who have made their way to the dog park to watch the cyclocross event. And Mitchell Cinnamon will round out the field here in heat number 2 on the men's side of competition in event number 2 as he comes across the line. 20th place in the heat, in at 24:14. It'll be good unofficially for 38th in the event. So your top 4 in the event results all coming from heat number 2. No surprise there. They were all in the top 5 in the qualifying times, led by the pole sitter, the top qualifier after the time trials yesterday, and the event winner by nearly 30 seconds, Ricky Garrard at 19:26.
Ricky Garrard was out to a great start. Led early, led in the middle, and it never looked back, as he was well ahead already going into the first obstacle. Fraser a little low at the catch, almost took himself out on that first one. That'll be the last time you see Fraser struggle on this course. So though, relative to Garrard, just so far behind. But watch Fraser, eyes down, find the tire track and ride it as far as you can through the middle, low gear, fast pedals. He did that 3 times in a row. Those transitions were good. Gerard, this is him all by himself over the barriers. Fraser just in the back part of your screen. And this was a scene to unfold as Gerard coming through just annihilated the top time set in the previous heat. And having a rookie debut, no better way to finish off a second event than with a dominating win for Ricky Gerard.
Ricky, an outstanding performance here today on the bike. Obviously comfortable on two wheels. What in your background gave you the experience to perform so well here today?
So I grew up on a farm in Australia, and I used to ride to school most days, and if I caught the bus, I'd catch a bus home, get on the bike and just go for a ride every afternoon, hit the trails, hit the jumps, just being a kid.
So the lesson to the kids watching at home is ride your bike to school. You might win a CrossFit Games event.
Yeah.
For you, this is something you've dreamed about for a long time. You just missed the CrossFit Games a year ago. How much motivation did you have coming into regionals this year and, of course, the Games?
Yeah, my motivation's through the roof. I missed out about 2 points last year, and I think that's the best thing that's ever happened to me. I've been hungry since, and I've been dreaming of this moment for a long time now, and I'm just stoked to be here, and I'm just, speechless.
Ricky, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Cheers.
Well, if day one is any indication, Ricky Gerard getting to the games, he's here to stay, as he had a strong showing, including the event to win. And we haven't seen bikes at the games since 2012. We saw a lot with this one, and we'll have the remainder of day number one coming up later today.